My name is Sadie Horner, and I'm here tonight to tell you about my AP research project. My project revolved around flowers, specifically sunflowers. I'm sure this is the picture that came to mind for most of you, and I'm sorry to tell you, but you're wrong. My flowers, sunflowers, are way more hardcore than that. In fact, they're a part of an amazing group of plants known as hyperaccumulators. Fancy word, right? A hyperaccumulator is a plant that exhibits extreme accumulation of one or more elements to a concentration level that is hundreds or thousands of times greater than found in usual plants. It means that they extract toxins, heavy metals, and pollutants from soil, meaning that they literally take it out of the earth and turn it into a super cute plant. Why does this matter? Aluminum toxicity has recently been recognized as a growing ecological risk. Aluminum toxicity occurs when acid rain increases the mobility of heavy metals in soil and causes them to leach into bodies of water. Another large contributor to aluminum toxicity is the combustion of fossil fuels and oil, which generates huge amounts of ash containing aluminum that leach into bodies of water. Contaminated water bodies transfer aluminum to plants, fish, and invertebrates, eventually leading to their presence in humans. Aluminum finds its way into plants and bioaccumulates inside of their tissues, limiting their growth and ability to uptake nutrients, eventually leading to the death of the plant. Aluminum toxicity in fish can permanently alter them or cause them to be unable to survive in aquatic environments. When animals drink contaminated water or eat contaminated plants, it can cause severe functional disturbances and toxic effects to their central and skeletal systems. In humans, the ingestion of aluminum toxicity leads to the toxicity of the respiratory system and accumulates in target organs such as the brain, muscles, stomach, and reproductive systems. The last thing that we need to talk about before we dive into my research project is hydroponics, a farming method that is surfaced in an effort to accommodate growing populations and limited availability of land. Hydroponics consists of growing plants without soil and completely eliminates the need for pesticides and fertilizer. It uses less water and often has a higher crop yield than traditional farming. And here's where my sunflowers come into play. My research question combined issues with aluminum toxicity, the ability of sunflowers to hyperaccumulate, and hydroponics in an effort to answer the question, what effect, if any, does the presence of sunflowers have on the extraction of aluminum toxicity from aquatic environments? Because I know you all want to leave ERIEx sounding like a genius, I'll go over a few other words that help to understand my project. Phytoremediation, phytostabilization, and hydroponics. Phytostabilization is the reduction of the mobility of heavy metals in soil. Phytostabilization is the ability of plants to remove pollutants and other toxins from the environment or to render them harmless. And hydroponics is the technique of growing plants without soil. Okay, now that we all know these super smart words, let's dive into my project. My research experiment took 12 weeks from start to finish. 4 weeks were spent growing the sunflowers from seeds in dirt pods. 4 weeks were spent allowing them to acclimate to their hydroponic system and continue to grow, and the final 4 weeks they spent implemented with aluminum toxicity. I planted them on January 5th, and within a week I had these cute guys, which turned into these, and these, and these, and these, and this. You can kind of see that I'm obsessed with them. They're kind of like my children. My dad calls them his grand plants. Obviously, their setup in the hydroponic system looked like this. It consisted of 10 grow bags, each lined with 2 plastic trash bags, with an air pump, a tube, and all of that to oxygenate the water. On top of the water, the sunflowers floated in styrofoam in their dirt pods, and above them is a genius grow light contraption that my dad built for me, and that's pretty much it. I masked the aluminum, added it to 5 gallons of water, and determined the initial concentration of the aluminum toxicity in each grow bag. And then I left the sunflowers in the water relatively untouched for the next 4 weeks. Before we get into some tedious and very exciting numbers, I have a few AP research expectation versus reality situations that I have to share with you. Expectation number 1. I thought that I would be able to obtain fully grown sunflowers to implement into my experiment because when I started, they were growing everywhere. The reality was, because I started my experiment in the dead middle of winter, most available sunflowers looked like this. Dead. Expectation number 2. Amazon told me that all of my products had 2-day delivery. The reality was, most of them were delayed days and even weeks later than I originally planned. Expectation number 3 was that I would be able to find an aluminum concentration kit easily and that it would be cheap to obtain. The reality was they're rare and they cost my entire life savings. Expectation number 4 was that I would be able to set up my project without any flaws or hiccups. The reality was I did things like flooded our prep room, like seriously flooded it. All of these contributed to a lack of time in my project, limited my testing abilities, and set my project's limitations. Despite my difficulty in finding aluminum tests, I managed to find this guy and get it delivered to the school. The test would only measure 1 sample of aluminum initially, so I divided it into 2, took 0.5 milliliters of my initial and post-water concentrations, and waited 5 minutes, and ended up with this. 2 vials, exactly the same color, indicating that my experiment had failed. At this point, I told myself, it's okay. Thomas Edison failed to make the light bulb over 1,000 times. I'm kidding. I just cried in my car. And then carried them around in my backpack, and something just wasn't sitting right. I knew they didn't just sit in their bags and grow. They're too hardcore. So I did some math, or more accurately, my friend Ray did, and she noticed this. When you take all of my concentrations of aluminum in milligrams per liter, and you find that their average ended up at roughly 450 milligrams per liter. I'm going to say that just one more time. 450 milligrams per liter. The test I used measured up to 1. So I took 50 milliliters of water from each of my grow bags and took a holistic water sample to the Colorado Analytical Lab. I pushed and pushed for them to rush my results, and my post-experiment concentration ended up at 20.727 milligrams per liter. It worked! So, really, really worked. I mean, look at this graph. These amazing little plants that I grew from seeds extracted over 400 milligrams of aluminum toxicity in aquatic environments in just 4 weeks. When I got these results, I cried again. This time, happy tears, because this means that they can save the world. This means that sunflowers can extract aluminum toxicity from aquatic environments at an exceptional rate, and indicates that they could do the same with other heavy metals, toxins, and pollutants. It also indicates that other hyperaccumulators could potentially do the same, and that we could clean up the world's pollution using plants, really just tiny seeds, and that we could save the ecosystems and habitats of animals and aquatic life all around the world. Most of us look at environmental issues in their overwhelming entirety and think that nothing can be done and that there is no way that one little thing that we do can change. But if this project has taught me anything, outside of how amazing sunflowers are, it's to look at the world and the problems we face not as incomprehensibly huge, but as millions of systems working together or failing together. And when we start to look at our problems like a million little puzzle pieces instead of a tsunami, we can make little, massive changes. We live in a place where a tiny seed can clean up millions of pollutants, and we should take advantage of that. Thank you.